Come close now, good fellow, and let the lantern do the work of the sun. The sea is quiet tonight. Hear it there, beyond the cabin wall, breathing against the old boards as gently as a sleeping hound. The ropes are still. The mast has no complaint. Even the gulls have tucked their sharp voices beneath their wings, and the moon, kind soul that she is, has laid a silver road across the water for any dream that wishes to wander. Aye, you need not keep watch tonight. I shall do that for you. I heard this tale first from a man named Captain Rowan Vale, though when I knew him, he was not much for titles. He was grey at the temples, thin from years of weather, and his eyes had the look of someone who had stared too long at horizons that never answered back. He commanded a small ship called the Marable, a sturdy little brig with a patched blue sail and a bell that rang in a sweeter note than any bell had a right to ring. Rowan was not the fiercest captain on the water. He had fought when fighting found him, lied when lies were needed, and stolen only from those who could afford the lesson. But mostly, in those last years, he carried cargo between forgotten ports and listened to the sea speak in its patient way. And then, one rain-washed evening, when his bones were tired and his heart was more tired still, a stranger gave him a map that was blank in daylight. Blank, that is, until a lantern was lit. So settle your head, good fellow. Let your shoulders loosen. Let the old world fade down to timber, tide, and candle glow. The Maribel is waiting at the dock, and Captain Rowan Vale has not yet learned what the lantern will show. Chapter 1. The Tired Captain. Port Mercy was not the sort of harbour that made itself known with bright music or proud towers. It was a low, rain-dark place tucked between two shoulders of black stone, where the houses leaned toward one another, as if sharing secrets against the wind. Nets hung from hooks beneath the eaves. Lanterns burned yellow in windows blurred by salt. The dock planks were slick, and every step upon them made a soft complaint. Captain Rowan Vale came into Port Mercy at dusk with a cargo of lamp oil, dried apples, 3 crates of nails, and 1 box of church candles wrapped in wool. The Maribel moved into harbour with hardly a sound. Her hull was scarred, but faithful. Her blue sail had been furled before the rain began, and water ran from the rigging in thin silver threads. Rowan stood at the rail with his coat collar turned up. He did not look like the pirate sung about by boys in taverns. His hat was plain. His beard was trimmed close. His cutlass, when he wore it, hung mostly as a memory. Yet there was something in the way he watched the water that made younger sailors lower their voices. A man who has survived the sea does not need to shout about it. His first mate, Mara Finch, came up beside him with the harbour papers tucked beneath one arm. "Rain will hold through midnight," she said. "Aye," Rowan answered. "It usually does when a man hopes for dry boots." Mara smiled, but only a little. She knew his humour had grown quieter that year. The crew knew it too. Captain Vale had not been cruel, not impatient, not lost exactly. But he was dimmed like a lantern with old oil. He slept poorly. He forgot meals. Sometimes, at morning watch, they found him staring east with both hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea. There are kinds of weariness that sleep will not mend. The body may rest, and still the heart keeps pace in its little room. For Rowan, that room held many ghosts. Men he had failed to save in a storm off the Grey Teeth. A brother who had sailed north and never returned. A wife who had waited 3 summers for him, and then, wisely perhaps, stopped waiting. He carried their names in the same silence where other captains carried pride. Port Mercy had one proper tavern, if proper is a generous word, called the Winkin' Gull. Its sign swung from one chain and squeaked when the wind turned mean. After the cargo was counted and the harbour fee paid, Rowan went there because a captain must sometimes sit among warm bodies, even when he wishes to be alone. Inside, the air smelled of peat smoke, wet wool, onion stew, and old wood. Sailors muttered over cups. A woman with silver hair played a slow tune on a fiddle beside the hearth. Not a dancing tune, a remembering tune. Rowan took a table in the corner where the lamplight did not press too hard against his eyes. He ordered stew and black bread. Mara joined him for a time, spoke of repairs, spoke of a loose block in the fore rigging, spoke of a merchant in Larkhaven who might pay well for winter salt. Rowan nodded in the proper places. At last she stood. "You should sleep before dawn," she said. "So I am told. So you are told by those still fond of you." That made him look up. There was kindness in her face, and it bothered him more than anger would have. "I will sleep," he said. Mara did not believe him. Good first mates seldom believe easy promises, but she left him there all the same. The hour grew late. The fiddle stopped. Rain tapped the windows with small cold fingers. One by one the sailors drifted out, shoulders hunched, laughter low and thin. Rowan remained with his hands around a cup of watered rum he had not touched. It was then the stranger sat across from him. No chair scraped, no greeting came first. One moment the opposite seat was empty, and the next it held a small old man wrapped in a coat the color of ash. His hair was white and fine as cobweb. His face had so many lines that it seemed charted by its own private weather. In his hands he held a long leather tube, cracked with age and tied with red cord. Rowan studied him without reaching for his blade. "You have the look of a man selling something," he said. The old man's eyes shone dark and bright. "No," he said, "I have the look of a man returning something. To me, to the sea, through you." Rowan sighed. "That sounds costly." "Only if you mistake it for treasure." Outside, thunder rolled far beyond the harbour mouth. The tavern keeper glanced over, then went back to wiping the same cup he had been wiping for half an hour. The old man placed the leather tube on the table. The red cord was faded, but tied in a sailor's knot. Rowan recognized the knot, not because it was rare, but because it was personal. 3 turns, a tucked loop, and a little mercy left in the slack. His brother had tied knots that way. Rowan's hand moved before his caution could stop it. "Where did you get this?" "From a chest that washed ashore years ago." "What chest?" "The kind that arrives when the sea is finished keeping a secret." Rowan frowned. "Speak plainly, old man." "I have never found plain speech useful in matters of the heart." He untied the cord with slow fingers and slid out a roll of pale parchment. He spread it on the table between them. It was blank. Rowan looked at the parchment, then at the stranger. "You crossed a wet town at midnight to show me nothing. I crossed farther than that. There is no ink. There is, under the right light." The old man nodded toward the lantern hanging above Rowan's table. Its flame was low, yellow, and steady. The tavern had many lamps, but this one was old brass, green at the seams, with glass smoked by years of use. As Rowan watched, the stranger lifted the lantern from its hook and lowered it until the light washed over the parchment. At first nothing happened. Then a line appeared, thin as a hair, blue as moonlight on deep water. It curved across the parchment, then forked, then gathered itself into the shape of a coastline. More lines woke beneath the lantern glow, reefs, soundings, a compass rose, a small drawn ship with a torn sail, and words in a hand Rowan knew so well that his breath forgot itself. Blackwater Isle. And beneath it, for Rowan, if the lantern still burns. The tavern fell away. Rain, smoke, fiddle memory, all of it sank into silence. Rowan stared at the words as if they had risen from a grave. His brother's name had been Thomas Vale. Thomas had sailed north 16 years before with a crew seeking a passage through the winter fog. No wreckage had returned. No survivor had spoken. No grave had been marked. Only absence came home. Rowan touched the edge of the map. "Who are you?" he whispered. The old man's expression softened. "Someone who was asked to wait until the right captain looked tired enough to listen. What is on Blackwater Isle? A room." Rowan almost laughed, but the sound would not come. A room. A room full of letters from sailors who never made it home. The lantern flame bent though there was no wind. The blue lines brightened. On the map, beside the drawn island, appeared a little mark shaped like a door. The old man stood. "Go by moonrise after the third bell," he said. "Take no greedy man with you. Take a lantern that has burned for grief and kindness both. Read only what is given to you. Carry back what is yours." Rowan reached across the table. "Wait!" But the stranger had already turned toward the door. Rain opened around him like a curtain. The tavern keeper swore later that no one left just then, and perhaps no one did. Perhaps some messengers belong more to tide than road. Rowan sat alone with the map. When the lantern was raised, the parchment went blank again. When lowered, the island returned, patient and pale. At dawn, Mara found him still there. His stew was cold. His eyes were clear for the first time in months. "We sail tonight," he said. Mara looked at the blank parchment in front of him. For where? Rowan lowered the lantern. The map bloomed blue. "For a place that has been waiting." Chapter 2. The map beneath the flame. No voyage begins when the anchor lifts. Not truly. A voyage begins in the small hours before, when a crew moves through half-light gathering what courage it can find. The Maribel prepared quietly. There was no shouting along the dock, no drunken cheer, no boasting promise of wealth. Captain Vale gave orders in a voice so calm that the crew obeyed before they understood the shape of the journey. Fresh water was loaded. Biscuit was counted. The fore rigging was repaired. A small barrel of lamp oil was brought aboard and lashed near the galley, though no one knew why the captain asked for it twice. Mara Finch knew better than to demand answers in front of the crew. She waited until the harbour bell had rung its second note after sunset and followed Rowan into his cabin. His cabin was plain, a narrow bunk, a bolted desk, a shelf of sea journals, a brass compass and a wooden cradle. On the wall hung a faded blue scarf that had belonged, Mara knew, to someone Rowan never named. The old lantern from the tavern stood on the desk now, though Mara had not seen him purchase it. Its brass chimney had been polished, but age still clung to it in the seams. The parchment lay beside it. "Captain," Mara said, "before I sail this ship into waters not marked on any honest chart, I would appreciate hearing whether we are chasing treasure, ghosts, or madness." "Perhaps all three," Rowan said. "That answer is poorly built." "Aye." He lit the lantern. The wick caught with a soft little sigh. Yellow light filled the cabin, warm enough to make the rain-streaked window look almost golden. Rowan lowered the flame near the parchment, and the map woke as it had in the tavern. Mara did not step back. That was one reason Rowan valued her. She feared things in a practical order. "Well," she said after a moment, "that is inconvenient." Rowan smiled faintly. "You see it, then?" "I see an island that should not be there, drawn in blue light by a map that wishes to be dramatic. Blackwater Isle. I know no such place, nor do I." The map showed a route northeast from Port Mercy, but not by the common lanes. It wound through a scatter of reefs known as the Widow's Buttons, then across a deep stretch where compasses were rumored to lose their manners. There were notes along the edge, some in symbols, some in Thomas Vale's hand. Rowan's throat tightened each time he looked at them. Mara leaned closer. "Is that your brother's writing?" "Yes." She was silent then, because friendship knows when not to press a wound with questions. Rowan traced one line without touching it. "The old man said the island holds a room full of letters. Sailors who never made it home." Mara folded her arms. "That is a cruel bait for grieving men." "I thought the same. And yet my brother tied the cord. My brother wrote my name, and if there is even a fool's chance that he left something behind, I will not die wondering." The Maribel creaked around them. Beyond the cabin, footsteps crossed the deck. A gull cried once in the rain, then thought better of it. Mara looked at the map for a long time. "You said, 'Take no greedy man.'" Rowan's eyes lifted. "How did you know that?" "It is written there." She pointed to a line near the compass rose. Rowan bent close. The words had not been visible before. "Take no greedy man. Take no cruel hand. Bring a lantern, and bring the names you remember." The letters faded, then returned, as if breathing with the flame. Rowan sat back slowly. "Mara, if you wish to remain in port, I will not hold it against you." "That is kind. I mean it." "I know. That is why I am ignoring it." She pulled a chair from the desk and sat. "We should choose the crew carefully." They did. The Maribel carried 22 souls in ordinary weather. For this voyage, Rowan chose 9. Mara Finch, whose courage had corners. Old Bellamy the cook, who had lost 2 sons to the sea and still salted soup as if feeding them. Neil, the quiet helmsman with a scar along his jaw and a habit of humming hymns under his breath. Little Pen, who was not little except in name, and could lift an anchor chain with the patience of a saint. Sarah Dawn, a young deckhand whose mother had vanished aboard a pearl boat. And 4 others of steady heart and soft ambition. No one was promised treasure. Rowan said there would likely be none. He said the voyage might lead only to an empty rock, a cruel trick, or a weathered room filled with dust. Any sailor who wanted coin could stay behind and receive full harbor pay. One man laughed and left. Another asked whether letters could be sold to families. Mara removed him from the list before Rowan could speak. By the 3rd bell after moonrise, the Maribel slipped from Port Mercy under a sky washed clean by rain. The clouds opened in long torn places, and moonlight spilled across the harbor mouth. The sea beyond was black, but not unfriendly. It lifted the ship as if recognizing an old errand. Rowan stood at the helm for the first hour. The map lay in a glass-fronted case beside the compass, with the lantern fixed above it. The route shone blue whenever the flame leaned near, then paled when the ship rolled away. It gave no easy command. It did not shout. It simply waited to be followed. Behind him, Port Mercy shrank to a handful of lamps. Then those lamps became stars fallen low. Then they were gone. The first night passed in quiet work. Sails adjusted, watch changed, the ship found her rhythm. Rowan remained awake longer than he should have, studying the map by lantern glow. Some notes appeared only at certain angles. One reef was marked with a warning, "Sing no victory here." Another stretch of sea bore the words, "Let the sleeping bell lie." Near dawn, as the eastern dark softened, the map began to fade, though the lantern still burned. Mara saw it too. "Daylight hides it," she said. "Aye, it belongs to the night." "Convenient for a sleep story," Bellamy muttered from the companionway, holding 2 cups of tea. Rowan accepted one. "You believe we are in a story?" "At sea, Captain, a man is always in a story. Trouble is, he rarely knows what kind until the bill comes due." Bellamy's tea tasted of ginger and smoke. Rowan drank it as the sun rose pale behind clouds. For a moment he wondered if, in daylight, the whole affair would seem foolish. But the parchment remained in its case. Blank, yes, but real beneath his hand. He felt the old knot cord in his pocket, tied by Thomas, or by someone who remembered him. The day passed softly. The sea smoothed itself until the Marable seemed to glide across polished slate. No other sail appeared, no storm gathered. Even the crew spoke in low voices, as if the voyage had entered a chapel. Sarah Dawn came to Rowan near evening with a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "My mother's name was Elian," she said. Rowan looked up. "She sailed on the pearl boat Candor. I was 6. He nodded slowly. "The map says bring the names you remember," Sarah continued. "So I wrote hers down. Is that foolish?" "No," Rowan said. "It may be the wisest thing any of us has done." By sunset, others had done the same. Bellamy wrote Alric and John Vale, though John was no relation to Rowan. Niall wrote a name and folded it so tightly no one could see. Mara wrote 3 names, then sat alone by the rail until the moon rose. When the lantern was lit again, the map returned brighter than before. Not only the route now. Around the edges, in careful blue script, were names: Elian Dawn, Alric Bellamy, John Bellamy, Thomas Vale, and many more, faint as breath on glass. No one spoke for a long while. Then the compass needle turned east by itself. The Marable followed. Chapter 3. Across the Sleeping Sea. There are waters that welcome a ship with salt spray and quarrel, and there are waters that receive her as a mother receives a tired child, with no question at all. For 3 nights the Marable sailed through the latter kind. The sea lay wide and dark beneath the moon. Waves rose in long, slow backs, lifting the ship, setting her down, lifting her again. The sail held a steady breath. Blocks clicked softly. The rudder murmured. Even the old ship's bell, which usually rang whenever the hull took a hard roll, kept still as if listening. Captain Rowan Vale began to sleep again, but only in pieces. An hour before midnight, another before dawn. When he woke, he did not wake with the old fear gripping his ribs. He woke with the sense that someone had called him gently from another room. On the second night, the map showed them through the widow's buttons. Those reefs were named for a woman who, legend said, had sewn black buttons onto her dress for each husband the sea took from her. Whether she had 2 husbands or 20 depended on who bought the ale. The reefs themselves were pale teeth beneath dark water, hidden by tide until a ship's belly found them. Many captains avoided that stretch even in daylight, but the lantern map drew a path in blue. "Steady!" Mara called from the bow. Neil stood at the helm, hands light on the wheel. Rowan stood beside the map case. The lantern flame bent forward, though the wind came from behind. and the blue line brightened where they must turn. 2 points starboard, Rowan said. Neil obeyed. The Maribel slid between reefs so close that moonlight broke white over stone on either side. No one breathed loudly. Bellamy, who claimed not to pray because heaven already had enough paperwork, muttered 3 entire prayers into his collar. Sarah held her mother's written name between her palms. At the center of the reef field, the water became perfectly still. Not calm, still. The waves stopped at an invisible circle and resumed beyond it. Within that circle, the Maribel floated on black glass. The stars beneath them were as clear as the stars above. For one strange moment it seemed the ship sailed not across the sea, but through the middle of the night sky. Then the old bell by the mast rang once. No hand touched it. The sound was soft, deep, and lonely. Every name written along the map's edge glowed. Sarah began to cry without making a sound. Bellamy removed his cap. Mara lowered her gaze. Rowan felt the bell note pass through his bones. It found old places there. It found Tomas laughing in a storm when they were boys. It found Tomas teaching him to splice rope. It found the morning the letter came saying his brother's ship had vanished, and the worse mornings after, when no second letter arrived. The map's warning came back to him. Let the sleeping bell lie. So Rowan said nothing. He did not ask who rang. He did not demand a sign. He let the note fade until only the water remembered it. Then the blue line moved on. By dawn, they were clear of the reefs. The third day was silver with fog. It came rolling low from the northeast, soft and thick, swallowing distance until the world was only the Maribel and the hush around her. Moisture gathered in beads on the rail. The sails hung damp. Voices sounded close even when men stood far apart. Fog can make a sailor's mind misbehave. It turns ordinary shapes into waiting figures. It makes the sea feel smaller and lonelier at once. But this fog brought no fear. It smelled faintly of cedar smoke and lavender, though neither belonged on open water. Bellamy noticed it first. "Smells like my wife's linen chest," he said. "You had a wife?" Sarah asked. "I had better than that. I had a woman who knew every lie I ever told and loved me only slightly less for each one." "Is she gone?" Bellamy stirred the galley pot without looking up. "Aye, but not to sea, to fever. Different thief, same empty chair." He said it gently, not as complaint. Sarah sat near the galley door, knees pulled up, and listened while he told her how his sons had both gone sailing because they could not bear the idea of growing turnips. Alric was bold, John was careful, which only proved the sea takes no account of such things. Their last ship had been the Harrow Maid, lost somewhere north of the Lantern Shoals. "I used to imagine them rich," Bellamy said. "Then I imagined them stranded. Then I imagined them drowned. After a while, I ran out of pictures and only had their names left." Sarah unfolded her little paper. "Maybe names are enough to open the door." Bellamy looked at her then, and his old eyes shone. "Aye, child, maybe they are." That evening the fog lifted in a single slow curtain. The moon rose large and low, colored almost gold near the horizon. When Rowan lit the lantern, the map did not show a route. Instead, it showed a drawing of the Maribel herself. Around the ship were small strokes, like falling rain, though the sky was clear. "What does that mean?" Mara asked. Rowan studied the margin. New words appeared beneath his brother's name. "Do not answer the voices from behind." Mara read it and became very still. The crew was told. No one mocked the warning. Near midnight, the voices began. They came soft at first, mingled with the wake. A woman humming, a boy laughing, a man calling for someone to wait. Each voice sounded as if it came from just behind the listener's shoulder. Sarah flinched when she heard her mother say her name. Bellamy gripped the rail so hard his knuckles paled. Niall, at the helm, closed his eyes for one heartbeat too long when a voice behind him whispered something only he could know. "Eyes forward," Rowan said quietly. The voices did not plead. That would have been easier to resist. They sounded warm, familiar, almost near enough to touch. "Rowan," said Thomas behind him. The captain's breath stopped. Not a ghostly moan, not a trickster's hiss. His brother's voice young and amused, as if calling him from the next room. "Rowan, you stubborn old crow, turn around." Mara's hand moved toward him, but she did not touch his sleeve. The map glowed brighter. "Do not answer the voices from behind." Rowan kept his eyes on the dark sea ahead. "I hear ye," he whispered, so softly perhaps only the lantern heard. "But I will not turn from the living to chase an echo." The voice laughed, not cruelly. Then it faded. One by one, the others faded too. The Marable sailed on. The crew stood trembling under the moon, but they had obeyed. No one had turned. No one had answered. Sometimes Goodfellow Love asks us to look back, and sometimes, if the road is narrow, Love asks us to keep walking until the true meeting place is reached. After the voices passed, the map showed the island, not as a drawing now, but as if seen from above. A crescent of black sand, a ring of pale cliffs, a lagoon shaped like an open hand. At the center was a hill crowned with cedar trees. Beneath the hill, a small blue door shone. Blackwater Isle. The compass needle steadied. Rowan rested one hand on the map case. "Tomorrow night," Mara said. "Aye. You are afraid?" "Yes. Good." He looked at her. "Only fools and villains arrive at sacred places without fear," she said. The captain smiled then, weary but true. Above them, the moon knew the way. Chapter 4. Blackwater Isle. They reached Blackwater Isle just after the next moonrise. At first it was no more than a shadow laid upon the sea. Then the shadow gathered edges. Cliffs rose pale as bone from water dark enough to deserve the island's name. A crescent beach curved inward, black sand shining under moonlight like crushed glass. Cedar trees leaned above the cliffs, their branches still though the sea wind moved around them. No birds circled, no surf roared. The waves folded themselves onto shore with the careful hush of someone entering a sick room. The Marable anchored outside the lagoon. The water there was deep and clear, but reflected no stars. It reflected only the moon. Rowan chose Mira, Bellamy, Sarah, and Niall to come ashore. Little Penn remained aboard with the others, though he gave the captain a look that said he would rather be facing cannon fire than waiting with his thoughts. "Keep the lantern burning," Rowan told him. "Which one?" Penn asked. "All of them, if you like." That nearly made the big man smile. They lowered the boat. The oars dipped without splash. Each stroke carried them across water that seemed thicker than ordinary sea. Rowan held the lantern map in a sealed case on his knees. The old brass lantern hung from Mara's hand, its flame steady and gold. As they approached the beach, the black sand brightened where the lantern light touched it. Tiny shells appeared, blue and white, then vanished when the boat moved on. Sarah leaned over the side. "They look like stars," she whispered. "Then best not pocket them," Bellamy said. "Stars are poor things to steal." The boat kissed shore. No footprints marked the sand before theirs. Yet there was a path. It began at the tide line and climbed between low rocks toward the cedar hill. Not paved, not cut, but known. The grass bent away from it. The shadows opened. The lantern flame stretched toward it like a hound catching scent. Rowan took the first step. The island smelled of rain, though no rain had fallen. Rain, cedar, old paper, and something faintly sweet, like apples stored through winter. The path rose gently. To their left, the lagoon lay still. To their right, the cliffs dropped into black water, where pale shapes moved far below. Fish, perhaps, or memories wearing fish shapes. On Blackwater Isle, it was best not to decide too quickly what anything was. Halfway up the hill, they found the first stone. It stood waist-high beside the path, smooth and dark. No name was carved on it. Instead, there was a single word, home. Sarah touched it with 2 fingers. It is warm. Farther on, another stone. Wait, then another. Forgive. Bellamy cleared his throat. This island has a habit of speaking in short knives. Mara carried the lantern higher. Her face was composed, but Rowan knew her well enough to see the tightness around her mouth. She had written 3 names. He did not know whose. He had never asked. At the top of the hill, the cedars formed a circle. Their trunks were thick and old, roots braided through the earth like hands clasped in sleep. In the center of the circle stood no temple, no ruin, no pirate vault. Only a small stone doorway set into the hillside, half covered with moss. There was no handle. The map had shown a blue door. Here, in the world, it was plain gray stone. Rowan lifted the lantern. Nothing happened. Mara lifted hers. Still nothing. Sarah unfolded the paper with her mother's name and held it toward the door. Bellamy did the same with his sons. Neil, after a moment, took out his tightly folded slip. Mira removed 3 names from inside her coat. Rowan brought out the red cord and the map. When the names were gathered in the lantern light, the stone door breathed. That is the only word I have for it. It breathed as a sleeper breathes before waking. Moss trembled, dust fell. Lines appeared across the stone, blue as the map, forming letters in a language older than any empire I ever cheated at cards. Then those letters changed into words they could read. Only what is given. Only what is yours. Leave grief lighter than you found it. The door opened inward. Warm air came out. Not damp cave air, not the stale breath of a tomb. Warm air, dry and fragrant with paper, wax, cedar, and lamp smoke. Rowan stepped inside, and the others followed. The passage sloped downward beneath a hill. Its walls were lined with small niches, each holding a lantern. As they passed, the lanterns lit one after another. Not with flame exactly, but with a soft amber glow. The light made no smoke. It made no heat. It made every face look younger and older at once. At the end of the passage was a room. No, good fellow. Room is too small a word for what they found. It was a hole carved beneath the heart of Blackwater Isle, round as the inside of a shell, and high enough that darkness gathered gently above the lantern glow. Shelves covered the walls from floor to shadowed ceiling. Shelves of cedar and black oak. Shelves filled with letters, bundles tied in ribbon, packets sealed with wax, single pages folded into squares, scraps wrapped in cloth, journals no larger than a palm, envelopes bearing names in hundreds of hands. There were thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, and every letter gave off the faintest light, as if moonlight had soaked into the paper and remained there, refusing to leave. In the center of the hall stood a long table. Upon it rested 5 letters, separated from all the rest. Each bore a name: Elian Dawn, Alric Bellamy, John Bellamy, Mara Finch, Thomas Vale. Mara inhaled sharply when she saw her own name. Not a dead sailor's name. Hers. The room was very quiet. Bellamy approached the table like a man walking toward judgment. Sarah pressed both hands over her mouth. Neil bowed his head over the letter meant for him, though its name was not one he had shared. Rowan could not move at all. For 16 years he had imagined what Tomas might say if given one final page. He had imagined anger, apology, instructions, a clue, a farewell. He had imagined so much that the real envelope frightened him. Mara touched his arm. "Captain," she said softly, "the island has brought us this far." "Aye. Best not insulted by refusing the door." Rowan gave a small, broken laugh. Each took their letter. The moment Rowan's fingers closed around Tomas's, the whole seemed to settle. The shelves sighed faintly, paper against paper, like leaves in a forest no wind had found. A chair moved back from the table by itself. They sat. No one hurried to open anything. That was right. Some treasures should be approached slowly. Gold can be grabbed, pearls can be scooped. But a last word from the lost is a cup filled to the brim. The hand must be steady before it lifts. At last, Sarah opened her mother's letter. Her eyes moved across the page, once, twice. Then tears slipped down her cheeks, but her mouth curved into a trembling smile. "She remembered my red shoes," Sarah whispered. "I thought no one remembered those." Bellamy opened Alric's, then John's. The old cook made no sound at all. He only placed one hand flat on each page, as if warming them. Neil read his letter with his shoulders shaken. Mara stared at hers unopened. Rowan broke the seal on Thomas's letter. The wax gave way beneath his thumb. The paper unfolded, and his brother's hand rose before him. Dark ink steady across the years. Chapter 5. The Room of Letters. Rowan, if this reaches you, then either the sea has become kinder than I knew, or you have become even more stubborn than I remember. I shall place my wager on the second. That was the first line. Rowan covered his eyes and laughed once, though the sound shook. Thomas had always begun serious things sideways, sneaking tenderness in under the guard of humor. He read on. "I do not know whether I am dead as I write this. That sounds foolish, but this island makes a man uncertain about the usual order of events. We found Blackwater 3 nights after the fog took our mast. The ship was broken. Half the crew had fever. We came ashore expecting water and wood, and instead found a door beneath the cedars. Inside was this hall. Inside were letters, some written by men dead 100 years, some by women who vanished before their children had learned their faces. Some, I swear it, by sailors who had not yet drowned but were already missed. The keeper of this place, if keeper is the word, told us that not all messages can cross the sea in bottles. Some are too heavy. Some must wait where grief and moonlight meet." Rowan paused. The hall seemed to lean close. He looked up and noticed, for the first time, a figure standing near the far shelves. It was not the old man from Port Mercy, though there was a likeness in the stillness. This figure was tall and wrapped in a cloak the color of deep water. The face beneath the hood was neither young nor old, not man, not woman, or perhaps both in the way the sea holds every river and asks no name of it. Their eyes shone with the same blue light as the map. No one cried out. The hall did not permit such noises. Mara saw the figure too. So did Sarah, Bellamy, and Niall. "Are you the keeper?" Rowan asked. "I keep nothing," the figure said. The voice was soft as pages turning. "I only tend what cannot yet be carried. Who writes these letters? The lost, the leaving, the almost gone, the ones whose final words had no shore." Bellamy held up one of his son's pages. "My boys wrote these, with their own hearts, if not always with their hands." Bellamy accepted that. In such a place, the heart seemed a more reliable instrument than fingers. Sarah looked around at the shelves. Why were they not sent? Many reasons. No ship, no address, no living messenger, no listener ready to receive. Grief can close a door as tightly as stone. Mara still had not opened her letter. "Why is mine here? I am not lost." The keeper's gaze rested on her with gentle weight. "Not all who fail to come home are dead." Mara went pale. For years, though Rowan had never asked, Mara carried 3 names from a mutiny aboard a ship called the Glass Heron. She had survived because she had hidden in a water cask while 3 friends fought on deck. She came home with their blood on her sleeve and their silence in her ears. She had never forgiven the part of herself that kept breathing. Her letter bore her own name because perhaps the one who needed to come home was Mara. She opened it then. While she read, Rowan returned to Thomas. "We tried to leave Blackwater, but the ship would not hold. Do not make a tragedy of that. I know you. You will try. You will polish guilt until you can see your face in it. Stop. We were far beyond rescue before the island found us. What it gave us was not a prison, but a harbor. I thought of you every day. I thought of Mother's kitchen and the way you stole the burnt biscuits because you claimed they had character. I thought of the summer we built that raft and sank it in water shallow enough to stand in, then told everyone we had survived a wreck. I thought of your face the first time Father let you hold the wheel. You were always looking toward the horizon, little brother. I was always looking back at shore. Strange, is it not, that you became the one who waited, and I the one who left?" Rowan swallowed hard. The hall blurred. Thomas continued, "If there is blame to give it to weather, rotten timber, poor judgment, and my own proud head. Do not keep any for yourself. I did not need you to save me. I needed you to live well enough that my love for you had somewhere to go." A tear fell onto the page. The ink did not run. At the table, Sarah read aloud a line from her mother, because she could not hold it inside. "Tell my little dawn girl that I saw whales the color of storm clouds, and every time one rose beside the boat I thought, there is a creature large enough to carry my love home." Sarah laughed through tears. Bellamy reached across and squeezed her shoulder. Then Bellamy read from Alric. "Da, I know you told me not to trust any captain with clean boots, and you were right more often than I admitted." The old cook barked a laugh that became a sob. From John's letter, he read more quietly. "Tell Alric I was not afraid at the end, even if he says he was not either. We were both liars in that way, but we sang your soup song, Da. The foolish one about onions. It helped." Bellamy folded over the table until his forehead touched the letters. No one disturbed him. Neil did not read his aloud. Later, Rowan learned it was from a husband lost before their marriage could be spoken in any port without danger. The letter gave Neil permission he had never asked for, and forgiveness he had never needed, but carried anyway. Mara's letter was from herself, and not herself. The words had been written in her own hand, older, steadier. It told her what her friends would have told her had she allowed them a voice, that survival was not theft, that hiding in the cask had not killed them, That living could be a form of remembrance instead of betrayal. She read it once, then again. Then she pressed the page to her heart and closed her eyes. Rowan finished Thomas's letter. There is a thing here they call the Ledger of Returning. Do not let the grand name fool you. It is only a table, an inkpot, and a promise. If you wish, you may write back. Not to summon me, not to undo the sea, only to set down what you have carried. Do that, Rowan. Set it down. Then go home, whatever home means now. Be kinder to your crew than sorrow has been to you. Sleep when the ship is safe. Eat before the stew cools. Tell some young fool the truth when he thinks grief makes him noble. And if you still have my red cord, keep it. I tied it badly on purpose because perfect knots are for men with no imagination. Your brother, Thomas P.S. If you cried before finishing this, I win. Rowan laughed then, openly, helplessly with tears on his face. The sound rose to the high dark of the hall and returned gentler. The keeper moved to the table. There was an ink pot there now, black as night water, and a stack of pale pages. You may answer, the keeper said. Only what is true, only what is yours. No one spoke for a while. Then Sarah took a page. Her hand shook at first, but steadied as she wrote to the mother she had known mostly through other people's memories. She told Elian about the red shoes, about growing tall, about joining the Marable, about how angry she had been, and how tired she was of being angry. She wrote, I think I can let the whale carry some of it now. Bellamy wrote 2 letters, one to each son. He began both with, You ungrateful turnip dodgers, because love in his family had always worn rough boots. By the end, he was telling them the soup song had never sounded right without them. Neil wrote for a long time and sealed the page without showing anyone. Mara wrote only 3 lines. Then she folded the letter with great care. Rowan sat longest with a blank page. How does one answer 16 years? He wanted to tell Thomas everything, every port, every storm. Every time he had almost followed him into the dark out of guilt. Every sunrise that had offended him by being beautiful when Thomas was not there to see it. But a page, like a heart, can only hold so much at once. At last he wrote, Brother, I have carried you like an anchor and called it loyalty. I understand now that love was meant to be a sail. I miss you. I forgive the sea as much as I am able. I forgive you for leaving, though you did not choose it. I will try by lantern light, and by daylight too, to forgive myself for staying. The red cord is in my pocket. The knot is terrible. You win. Rowan. When he finished, the ink shone blue for a moment, then settled black. The keeper gathered each answer. One by one, they lifted the letters and placed them among the shelves. The room shifted to make space. Bundles moved softly. Ribbons loosened and retied themselves. Somewhere far above, or far beneath, a bell rang without sorrow. Rowan stood. Can these letters be taken home? He asked. The ones given to you, yes. All of them? Sarah asked, looking at the countless shelves. The keeper's expression was kind but sad. Not by one ship, not by one night. Rowan looked around the hall. Thousands of unsent words. Thousands of families who had waited until waiting became a shape in the house. The pirate in him, old though it was, understood treasure. The captain in him understood cargo. The grieving man understood duty. Then we come back, he said. Mira looked at him. The keeper said nothing. Rowan continued, more certain now. We carry what we can. We find families where names remain. We return when the moon and map allow. If this room is a harbor, then let the Marable be one of its boats. The keeper's eyes brightened. Many have taken comfort, they said. Few have offered service. Do we have permission? The keeper touched the table. A drawer opened. Inside were 7 bundles of letters tied in blue thread. Each bundle bore a port name. Port Mercy, Larkhaven, St. Aura, Bellwether Key, North Hook, Martin's Rest, Low Candle Bay. Begin where you are known, the keeper said. Bellamy picked up the Port Mercy bundle as carefully as if it were a sleeping child. The hall's lanterns dimmed a little, not in warning, in farewell. Must we leave? Sarah asked. All harbors are for leaving, said the keeper. Even this one. Rowan took Thomas's letter and tucked it inside his coat, close to his heart. It did not heal him all at once. No true thing does. But it changed the weight. The anchor had become, if not a sail yet, then cloth waiting for wind. They walked back through the passage carrying letters that glowed softly in their arms. Behind them, the room of letters remained under the hill, patient as a moonlight, holding what could not yet be carried until the next right lantern came. Chapter 6. The Return by Moonlight. The path down from the cedar hill seemed shorter than the path up, as return roads often do. The stones beside it still bore their single words, but now Rowan noticed more of them. Not only home, wait, and forgive. There was remember. There was release. There was begin. At the beach, the boat waited where they had left it, though the tide had not touched it. The black sand held their footprints from the climb, each one filled with a faint silver sheen. Sarah knelt and pressed her palm beside one of them, not to take anything, only to thank the ground in the way children understand before adults teach them embarrassment. The sea between shore and ship was calm. The Maribel's lanterns burned from stem to stern, warm dots against the dark. Little Pen stood at the rail, broad shoulders stiff with worry. When he saw the boat push off, he raised one hand, then quickly wiped his face as if rain had found him in a clear weather. No one spoke on the row back. The letters lay wrapped in oilcloth beneath Bellamy's feet. Thomas's letter rested inside Rowan's coat. Sarah held her mother's page in both hands and looked not at it, but at the moon. Mara sat with her face turned towards the island, unreadable in the soft light. Halfway across the lagoon, the old brass lantern flickered. The water below the boat brightened, not with reflection. From underneath, shapes appeared in the black. Keels, masts, drifting sails, all made a pale blue light. Ships, dozens of them, some great, some small, some ancient in their lines, some familiar enough to make Bellamy gasp. They rested beneath the water as if anchored in a second sky. "The Harrow Maid," Bellamy whispered. Sarah leaned forward. "The Candor." Rowan saw a vessel with a broken winter mast and knew, without being told, that it was Thomas's ship. Upon its deck stood figures, not clear, not solid, more like memories seen through rain. One lifted a hand. Rowan did not hear Thomas this time. He did not need to. He lifted his own hand in answer. The underwater fleet faded slowly, as stars fade at dawn. When the boat reached the Maribel, the crew helped them aboard with unusual gentleness. Even men who knew nothing of what had happened seemed to sense that ordinary noise would be unwelcome. The bundles of letters were carried to the captain's cabin and placed on the desk beneath the lantern. Little Pen hovered at the door. "Was there treasure?" he asked, then looked ashamed of the word. Rowan placed a hand on his shoulder. "Aye," he said, "more than we can carry, and none that can be spent." Pen nodded, as if that made sense, and perhaps it did. The anchor came up before dawn. As the Marable turned from Blackwater Isle, fog gathered around the cliffs. The cedars faded first, then the hill, then the crescent beach. Last to vanish was the stone doorway, a small blue mark beneath the trees. It shone once, like an eye closing. By sunrise, there was no island behind them, only open sea, but the map remained. In daylight, it was blank again, though not empty. Rowan had learned the difference. Some things do not show themselves and are still there. The return voyage was quieter than the outward one, but not heavy. Bellamy cooked as if feeding a festival. He made onion soup the second night, and though he claimed it needed more pepper, he sang the foolish song his sons had remembered. His voice cracked on the third verse. No one mentioned it. Several joined him on the fourth. Sarah spent long hours at the bow. Sometimes she read her mother's letter. Sometimes she simply held it against her chest and watched for whales. On the final morning before Port Mercy, a grey back rose beside the ship, vast and smooth, followed by a plume of breath that caught sunlight and became silver mist. Sarah laughed so brightly that the whole crew turned. "Large enough," she said. No one asked what she meant. Mara changed too, though in ways smaller and perhaps deeper. She slept. Not much, but some. She stopped flinching when barrels shifted below deck. Once, Rowan found her repairing a torn sail while humming a tune from a ship he did not know. "Glass Heron song?" he asked gently. She glanced at him, and for a heartbeat he thought she might close the door of herself again. Instead, she nodded. "My friend Lisa sang it badly," Mara said. "We loved her badly for it." "That sounds worth remembering." "It is." Neil kept his sealed letter near the helm. He said little, as was his way, but his humming changed. The old hymns remained, but there was a lighter tune beneath them now, one Rowan had never heard. As for Rowan, he read Thomas's letter every night by lantern light. The words did not change, but he did. The first night, they broke him open. The second, they steadied him. The third, they made him angry in a clean way, not at Tomas, but at all the years he had given to silence. By the fourth night, he found himself remembering stories he had not allowed himself to touch. Tomas fallen into a fish barrel, Tomas claiming clouds looked like kings, Tomas tying a terrible knot and insisting it was art. Grief, when it begins to loosen, does not vanish. It becomes weather. Some days rain, some days mist, some days a clear wind that smells of someone loved. On the fifth night, Rowan slept 6 hours. Mara told him this when he woke, because she had written it down. 6, he said, 6 and a little. Did the ship sink? Not noticeably. You also ate hot stew yesterday. You are keeping a ledger? Aye, the ledger of Captain behaving like a living man. Rowan almost objected. Then he laughed. The sound surprised them both. Port Mercy appeared on the 7th evening, tucked between its black stone shoulders, lamps glowing through rain. The harbour looked exactly as it had before, and entirely different. That is often how home behaves after a true voyage. It does not change shape. You do. The Marable docked without ceremony. Rowan did not go first to the tavern, nor to the harbour office. He took the Port Mercy bundle beneath his coat and walked with Mara and Bellamy through wet streets to a narrow blue house near the Netmaker's Lane. The first letter was addressed to Anwen Pike, widow of Samuel Pike of the Good Mercy, lost 19 years. Anwen was very old. Her hands shook when she opened the door. Rowan removed his hat. "Madam," he said, and found his voice nearly failed him. "I carry a letter from Samuel." For a moment she stared at him as if he had spoken in thunder. Then she stepped aside. They stayed only long enough to see the seal broken and hear the first sob become a laugh. That was enough. Some rooms are not for captains to occupy. Some treasures must be delivered and left to open in private. They carried 3 more letters that night. One to a brother who had become a schoolmaster. One to a daughter who had her father's eyes and did not know it until the page told her. One to the tavern keeper of the Winking Gull, who received a note from a man he had pretended not to miss for 22 years. He read it behind the bar, wiped both eyes with his apron, and gave everyone in the room free stew badly salted. Word spread, as word will. By morning half of Port Mercy knew something impossible had come ashore. Some called it miracle, some called it cruelty, some called it lies until a letter found their own door, and then they called it by the name written at the bottom of the page. Rowan kept no payment. He accepted bread once, because Anwen Pike insisted with a force no captain could withstand. He accepted a repaired glove from the schoolmaster's wife. He accepted a small jar of honey from the tavern keeper, who said it was not thanks, only an attempt to improve Bellamy's tea. The letters from other ports waited in the captain's cabin. The map waited too. On the 3rd night after their return, Rowan lit the old brass lantern and lowered it over the parchment. Blackwater Isle appeared faintly, distant now. Around its edges new lines formed, not a route this time, a promise. When the lantern is kind, the road will remember. Mara stood beside him. "We will need supplies for Larkhaven," she said. "Aye, and St. Ora after that. Aye, this may take years." Rowan touched Tomas's red cord, tied around his wrist now. "I have spent years carrying an anchor," he said. "I would not mind spending a few carrion letters." Outside, rain softened against the deck. The Maribel rested in harbour, but not for long. She had become part cargo ship, part chapel, part messenger of the moon. There are worse things for a vessel to become. And Captain Rowan Vale, who had come to Port Mercy tired enough to mistake himself for finished, began again. The lantern burns low. So there you have it, good fellow. The tale of the tired captain, the lantern map, and the island that kept the words no wave could carry. Some say the Maribel sailed for many years after that, never rich, never famous in the proper pirate fashion, but welcome in certain harbours where old grief sat by cold hearths. She would arrive near moonrise, blue sail patched and quiet, and Captain Rowan Vale would step ashore with letters wrapped in oilcloth. He never announced himself loudly. He never made a performance of sorrow. He simply knocked, removed his hat, and offered the page. Some doors closed against him. Not every heart is ready when the tide arrives. Rowan learned to leave those letters in safe hands and trust time to do what captains cannot. But many doors opened, many lamps were lit, many names, thought lost to wind and wreck, were spoken again in kitchens, chapels, workshops, bedrooms, and taverns, where someone had waited so long they had forgotten waiting had an end. As for Blackwater Isle, it was not found by charts. Greedy ships searched for it after rumours spread. For greed hears the word treasure, even when the rest of the sentence says no gold. They found only fog, reefs, and their own poor manners. The island did not appear for them. Sacred places are clever that way. But sometimes, when the moon is high and a lantern burns for grief and kindness both, a blank map may show blue lines. A compass may remember a road no sailor taught it. A quiet island may rise from the dark, and beneath the cedars, a door may open into a room full of letters. I like to think Captain Rowan grew old with Thomas's red cord around his wrist. I like to think Mara Finch laughed more often. I like to think Sarah saw whales whenever she most needed them. I like to think Bellamy's onion song travelled farther than any respectable song should, turning up in ports where no one knew why it made them feel less alone. And I like to think that somewhere under that moonlit hill, the keeper still tends the shelves. New letters arrive when the sea has no other road for them. Old letters wait without bitterness. The lanterns burn softly. The room is patient. Perhaps that is the gentlest part of the tale. Nothing true is wasted, not love spoken too late, not names whispered into pillows, not the little memories that seem too small to matter. Red shoes, burnt biscuits, a bad knot, a foolish soup song, a hand lifted from the deck of a ship made of blue light. The sea is wide, aye, wider than any of us can reckon. It takes, it hides, it changes every shore it touches. But it also carries, in bottles, in songs, in dreams, in lantern maps, in the hearts of tired captains who decide one night that they are not finished after all. So if you have been carrying something heavy, soft now. Set it down beside the lantern for a while. Let the flame show only what you are ready to see. Let the tide have the rest until morning. The Maribel is safe in harbour tonight. Her blue sail is furled. Her bell is quiet. Captain Rowan sleeps in his cabin with a letter beneath his hand, and old Captain Crow keeps watch at the rail. Beyond us, the moon lays her silver road across the water. No need to fear the dark sea, good fellow. No need to answer every voice behind you. Rest your bones. The lantern has burned low, the map has folded itself back into sleep, and if another tale waits beyond the last honest star, it can wait until tomorrow. And so, good fellow, if your eyes have grown heavy, let them close. The sea has taken the tale, the lantern has burned low, and old Captain Crow will keep the watch until morning.